Hello and welcome back. It is the Simon and Friends podcast. If you're joining us on YouTube, welcome to the Simon and Friends podcast on YouTube, part of Box Score Network. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel while you are here. Along with these videos, Ben and I are going to be doing some draft related content here on the YouTube channel. You can also check Ben out every month on the Simon and Friends podcast, the audio version, doing this draft content. But along with the draft stuff, we do a weekly preview show on YouTube. Comes out Saturday night, Sunday morning, previewing the NFL slate of games. So make sure you check that out as well. If you're here on the audio version, welcome back. Thank you all so much for listening. We're now going to get into our quarterback check-in for the 2025 quarterback prospects. And Ben, we just talked about Shadur Sanders for a long time, so we might as well just dive back into him and what's been going on. So, um, over the course of this season, almost the whole college football season has been played at this point. What are you seeing from Shadur? What are you liking? Just give me anything. General thoughts, specific things you like, dislike. Get into it.
I really like Shador. That's a guy I want to quarterback my franchise if I'm an NFL franchise that needs a quarterback. Now, to be clear, and I feel like most of mock draft nation is sitting in this position as well. I don't like him as much as Stroud. I don't like him as much as Caleb Williams. I don't
Hmm.
like him as much as what I've seen out of Jaden Daniels on an NFL field this year. And I don't view him as franchise savior material. But I definitely view him as a guy that if we put a decent roster around him with a decent coach, he can be a part of the winning. He could be a part of the reason we win. And so I don't want him to have to keep running around with a bad offensive line like he did in college. And I want him to have people to throw the football to. So I really like it. Some of the things I look for in quarterbacks that I see with Shador is production. I want to see production volume for a year or 2 years. I really want to see that. You get that with Shador, man. Every week it's 445 yards, it's 310 yards, it's 266. He has. I'm looking. I don't see a stat line lower this season than 244 yards.
Hmm.
Um, it's 35 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, so that's a good ratio. Um, he 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 doesn't run the football a whole lot, but boy, he runs out to the flat and is always looking downfield. He can throw deep. He can throw short. I've seen him throw accurate. I've seen him throw screen game. I've seen him throw to a lot of tight windows. I've seen him throw jump balls where his guy gets it, not somebody else. There's so much that he does that I like. I really, really like this guy. I want him on my team, but I do want to surround him with some good stuff. A couple of things I don't like. The obvious one is he hangs onto the football.
Hmm.
And so at
Hmm.
the NFL level, when
Yep.
everybody's faster, that's going to mean sacks. And if he tries to throw it late, that's going to be interceptions. So I'll have to work with him on that, get him kind of retrained to stay on the pocket until you need to move, until
Hmm.
we tell you to move. That's a big one. And then he doesn't have a big cannon of an arm. He's got a sufficient arm. He can throw to
Right.
anywhere he needs to. But at the NFL level, you're just not going to always every week just be able to throw it up to you guys. All right,
Yep.
they're going to, the NFL knows how to shut that down. So he's going to have to learn how to work the system. And then the third thing I need to see is him gritting his way through because listen, he's going to have weeks where he's throwing for 150 yards and he's already got 2 interceptions.
Hmm.
I would like to know, and I think he is, I would like to know that he can still grit his way to a victory even though he himself isn't having kind of his Heisman game like he's used to having. Don't know that he's had a lot of chance to show that yet. Those are kind of three of the things I would like to see from my side.
Yeah, that's a lot of great stuff. And again, if this is the first time you're listening, Ben watches all these college games live. So he's watching through the like I'm watching college football lens right now at this point in the year.
Yeah.
I don't watch college football. I'm coming from it. I'm just turning on the film on these specific guys without the context of the game and the season, all that stuff. So when you hear what we have to say, just remember that context.
Yep.
One thing actually two things that stood out to what you said that I had specifically written down, and I'm comparing to my notes that we had preseason. The athleticism this year, I think, is showing more than it did last year. Last year, I watched the TCU game from last year before the season in our preseason show. And I said there's some level of athleticism, but he's not a very creative player, right? He wants to be in the pocket. He wants to, move side to side a little bit as he needs, but he wants to be in the pocket and he wants to throw the ball because he has a good arm, he has fantastic accuracy, He can throw the ball all over the field, different types of throws, and that's what he wants to do. But the two games I watched this year from this year, Nebraska and Cincinnati, there was a lot more of him escaping the pocket, extending the play, play action, designed runs, all that stuff. And he's
Right.
still not a great athlete, but it's good to know that there's the baseline level of, okay, when the play breaks down, I can get out of the pocket and do that, right? I can execute play action and get out to the flat and escape the edge rusher as I need to. I can move away from a defender and get out of the pocket and scramble a little bit because you need to be able to do that. If you're going to play at the NFL level, you have to be able to do that. You can't just be a pocket passer in the NFL these days. So it was really good to see that. The second thing I saw, based on what you were saying, is the holding on to the ball. And he will default to that if he has to. But you can see him going through his progressions and he's on time mentally, right? He knows here I need to be at this point, here I need to be at that point, here I need to be at that point. So when he has more NFL wide receivers that are getting open at more time, and it's not going to happen all the time, right? He's not going to get so the result is he needs to be able to throw the ball away or
Yeah.
escape a little bit, right? Run a little bit because they're not going to be perfectly on time. It's a little like Justin Herbert is this way, where and he's learned to check the ball down a little too early, right? When this happens, but if he's
Mm-hmm.
moving through his progressions one, two, three, and he'll just get rid of the ball. Shadur is so on time with his progressions that hey, if you're not open when you're supposed to be open, I'm moving on. I'm not waiting around for you to get open. So he's on time, but if his receivers aren't getting open or his line isn't protecting the way they're supposed to, his response is to hold on to the ball instead of okay, where get it out. Where's that check down? Throw the ball out of bounds. Get whatever. That stuff he'll learn. But I think that mental processing is there that he's on time. The holding on to the ball is it's almost like the I'm just such a perfectionist. I can't like be creative, right? And I said that
Right.
preseason, like he doesn't have that creativity. It's like, what do you mean I'm supposed to do this? I'm supposed to do X, Y, Z. Like, um, so yeah, if he can do that a little bit and that blends in with using the athleticism a bit, I think there could be a good quarterback in here at the NFL level for sure.
I agree. Real quick, number one knock on him that I've heard is hanging on to the football too long. That's from everybody that's not a huge fan of his. That's it. At the college level, though, these guys kind of get told to hang on to the football, extend the play. You're the best athlete on the field.
Hmm.
You will figure out a way to beat all these 19 and 20-year-olds because you're better than they are. So if you just hang on to the football, when you get up to the NFL level, you're probably not the best athlete on the field any longer. And I'm not even talking about his athleticism. You're not even the best player on the field any longer. So
Right.
Shador might be the best player on the field at Colorado most of the time, probably not be that in the NFL level. So now you have to retrain. Hey, get rid of the ball quick. You got 2.5 seconds. Balls out. Balls out. Balls out. You can't keep extending like you used to in college because you're not the best player on the field any longer.
What do you think would be a good fit for him right now? And obviously for all these guys, we would say like a good head coach, a good offensive line, a good receiver core, like stuff like that, right? So that's all the obvious. And they're not going to get those things or not going to get two of those things or even one of those things in some of these instances. But I guess the best version of Shadur, what do you think that looks like when you look at the teams here, the coaches here? Like what do you think he needs? Like if he's going to be when he's at the NFL level, what do you think will help him the most?
Ben Johnson would help him the most. That would just be a magical pairing, right? And
Yeah,
Ben's there. Ben's hoping for this. I win a Super Bowl in Detroit this year, and then somebody that I want to go to, not named the Jets, calls on me and I go there and then I pick out the young quarterback I want to
right.
work with and we're cooking. That's
Yep.
what Ben's got to be thinking because that's what I would be
Hmm.
thinking. Now whether or not that's Shador for Ben, I don't know, but for Shador, that's what I would want is to be
Oh
working
yeah.
with Ben Johnson. Now if that falls apart, you get all the way down for me to the Cleveland Browns and I know Haslam's a problem there in the ownership box, but you talk about a ready-made roster there.
Hmm.
for a guy
Mhm.
that I, in my head, already isn't franchise savior material. I'm a little worried if he goes to the Giants or the Raiders
Yeah,
because they're
they got a
they're
lot of
working
work to
on
do.
it. They're
Hmm.
working on it, but they got work. So
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at on that quick front.
yeah, it would. He would be a really good plug and play player, and you could say that about again, you could say that about a lot of quarterbacks, but the way he plays would be very good at that. And Ben Johnson, again, I was teasing you about like be a good head coach. Like obviously that would be great. But there's a lot of comparisons to him and Jared Goff, believe it or not, because Jared Goff is not a
Yeah,
very creative player. Jared Goff is I can make every single throw, and I sometimes make a really bad decision under pressure. Now, Shador doesn't do it to the degree of Goff in terms of the interceptions, but just like taking a bad sack, right? Goff,
right.
I don't know the numbers. This is very anecdotal, but when I think of Goff and being under pressure, I don't think of him taking really bad sacks. I think of him saying, "Crap, I can't take a bad sack, so I'm going to throw it to the other team because that's a lot better." Um, and I think Shador would have the opposite problem, which is the young quarterback version, right? And Will Levis has the Jared Goff, where I'm going to throw it to the other team. I think Sanders would just take the sack when he shouldn't. Um, but so I mean that would make sense in terms of like, okay, I have this offense ready made, and it's not a Tua situation. I can't believe I found a way to disparage Tua, disparage Tua. Where it's just, hey, you just need to be able to throw the ball 10 to 15 yards down the field in the middle of the field when I tell you to. It's not that. It's, hey, I'm going to have you make tough throws, but I'm going to tell you where it's going to be, and it's going to be open every time.
Right.
And you have to, again, this like this something that Tua doesn't, Jared. You have to be able to put it on with great accuracy, right? And Shador could do that, man. He can hit. I think he has I still think he's the most accurate quarterback in the draft. Um, so I think that would be great. And yeah, if that was the Raiders and they add a receiver in there because they already got good offensive linemen, right? There's no Pro Bowlers, but I'd have to really look. But they have young guys there that I like. I don't know who the weakest part of it is right now, um, but that that it wouldn't be bad. But yeah, Cleveland, especially once because now that Jack Conklin's back, their O line looks a lot better. Um, But yeah, if there was just a ready-made, even just the system is there, right? And you're not putting it on him, right? I would almost care more about who the coach and the system is for Shadur than the players around him. You can add the players,
Right.
but
Right.
if you get me just the right offensive system, I think Shadur could execute just about anything after that.
Yeah, I would agree. Ben Johnson to the Raiders would be a possibility. I think Ben would consider that.
Hmm.
And then the Raiders picking up Shador. That's a pretty good start to, and they've got some other things that going on there.
All right, I promise we're not just going to say this quarterback needs Ben Johnson every time because you wouldn't learn a whole lot from us in that point. All right, let's talk about Cam Ward next. So Cam Ward, we didn't really talk about a whole lot in our preview show, but we said this was the quarterback we were most excited to watch this season, coming from 2 years of Incarnate Ward, 2 years of Washington State, coming to Miami. Um, Ben, what have you seen from Ward in his first year at Miami, his 1 year at Miami?
I don't remember ever seeing a quarterback kind of Mario his way up the plateaus the way Cam Ward has. You
Yeah.
mentioned it from Incarnate Word, which is Nowheresville, to Washington State, which still isn't primetime football, to Miami, and he's looked fantastic at every stop. Just tremendous. So here's the things I like about Cam Ward: the production is there everywhere. The production is there. The touchdown to interception ratio is very good. It's not elite, but it's very good. The yardage is there almost every time. He almost never has a bad yardage game anywhere. Man, yardage is plenteous. So I like that. I like the arm strength. To me, the arm strength isn't as good as Shador's. You think maybe of
Hmm.
a water hose spraying out there consistently. Cam Ward is going to struggle a little bit more with consistently throwing a deep ball than Shador, and even Shador isn't elite at that. He's
Hmm.
pretty good at that. So to me, Cam Ward has a little bit smaller sphere that he's working with. Um, Cam Ward not. not going to run the football a whole lot. He's nimble enough to get out of situations
Yeah.
and catch a first down. That's kind of where it runs out at. The one sticking point I have with Cam Ward, and listen, I would draft Cam Ward. I would draft him high. I would want him on my team. But again, he's not franchise savior material. So I've got to have a good coach roster combo here. The one problem I have with Cam Ward is it feels like watching him at Miami, there's a lot of yards after the catch involved here with
Mm,
his receivers. When I
okay.
see it, and that starts with Xavier Restrepo, but it seems to go to other places as well. A lot of the yardage seems to be I hit this guy at this route in this place, which placement is good. Ball placement pretty good there. But still, there's a lot of plus yards added on. And I don't know that the NFL, once they figure that out, is going to allow that.
Hmm.
So then you go back to, well, Cam doesn't have that super consistent deep arm. It's not that he can't throw that. It's just not
Hmm.
necessarily going to challenge NFL defenders deep if the guy is covered. So now if they also start to take away that timing route over the middle, is he good enough to kind of Brock Purdy his way through everything else? And I do think he's got a stronger arm than Brock Purdy. I feel like the answer is yes. I feel
Hmm.
like if you put him in a Brock Purdy kind of a situation, maybe not even that extreme, I do feel like if you put him in that situation, he will develop, he will grow, he will figure it out, he'll take his lumps, but he's going to need to be something like that. So that's kind of where I'm at on Cam Ward right now.
Yeah, so this exercise was my first time getting to watch Ward. I watched the Cal game and the Virginia Tech game from this year. Not the best competition, but ACC, what are you
Right.
gonna do? Good arm, can really rip it when he does hit his back foot. And this was a little bit where I was at with Shadur last year because his footwork last year, his first year at Colorado, wasn't always the best, but and it's better this year. And for Ward, like when he does hit that back foot, like the ball does fly off his hands, right? And it's just a matter of doing that every time. And that's a young quarterback thing. Um, he does have a tendency to hold the ball and drift in the pocket, which is my like number one bugaboo when I'm watching quarterbacks. Like, what are you doing in the pocket
Right.
when you're waiting for stuff to develop, right? Are you standing strong in the pocket, moving side to side, or are you drifting back and back and back? And even when the pocket's clean, like he just tends to drift. I don't know if it's a I'm ready to escape thing, but yeah, through those two games, he does not run nearly as much as I thought he did, but he will move in and around and outside of the pocket, trying to extend the play and make a throw. He definitely attacks every part of the field, which I do love. He will hit the middle of the field. He will go deep on down the sidelines. Um, and there's a little more. I heard somebody say this about like it's almost like I haven't heard this exact comparison, but they're almost like the Jordan Love versus CJ Stroud of it, where Stroud is like your meticulous 1, 2, 3 pocket passer who just like does everything, doesn't seem that creative. And then there's Jordan Love, who's just like the elasticity. That's the word I've heard people use about it. Just like it's like you're watching Plastic Man, the way that guy runs around and rips the ball. And that's what I feel about these two guys. Like I feel like Kim Moore's just like running around. He's gonna like rip something cool like every other time I watch him. So I do think he has more of that creativity that Sanders doesn't naturally lean on, but I do think Sanders is the better quarterback right now. And this isn't a like Cam Ward just is like a running quarterback. He's not a running quarterback. He can do it, but
Right.
I think he's just more creative from a like pocket maneuverability, extend the play aspect of his game than Sanders is. But he wants to throw the ball and he can throw the ball. He can throw it all over the field. Um, it's just that pocket awareness right now, that skittishness of the feet that I don't love. And well, before I get into that, so that's the one thing they're going to be in the playoffs, right? They're going to be in this college football playoff that
That's
I hear
still up
people
in
really
the
care
air.
about.
Yeah.
Oh Lordy.
That's a
Anyways,
gray area.
we won't go down that can of worms then. Um, well, whatever's next for him, playoffs, bowl game, whatever games, I would like to see that. But then just wherever he goes, that's the one thing I'm going to hone in on very early. It's what is he doing in the pocket right from the beginning? Is he going to snap that ball and take 7 steps every time he gets it, or is he going to bounce and drift to a side while he's waiting for things to happen, almost like he's not even thinking about it? I want to see that cleaned up because I think everything he does with his arm and his eyes and his processing, I think all that's on. I just need better pocket awareness to not take really bad sacks throughout a game.
I like both of these guys. I like Shador a little bit better. Where are you at on arm strength between these two guys? I feel fairly confident in saying they're not elite. I'm not
Right.
even totally sure they're at the next level. Maybe if we graded them at 94s, 95s, I'm feeling more like they're in the 90, 91 categories. Where are you at, and who do you even think has maybe the future stronger arm here?
I think it's Cam Ward. I think Sanders. I think he has a bit of a better arm. I don't know. I'd really have to think about this. But like I think about Joe Burrow. Like Joe Burrow can hit any deep ball you want, but that's
Right.
based off of timing and accuracy, right? That's not
Mm-hmm.
based on just like the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, like true arm talent, arm strength. That's just like I know exactly when and where and how to throw this deep ball, and I can get it 45 yards down the field, and I am throwing to Jamar Chase, so that makes everything look better.
Right.
I put Shadir way more in that camp. He might have a little bit of a stronger arm than Bro, but I think his accuracy and his timing is just so good, and it does come off his hand good. I think that's just so good that it maybe feels a little bit better than it actually is. But I think Ward, man, when like I said, when he hits that back foot, and if there's gonna be like if you tell both guys like this nine ball is just gonna be open at the 30-yard line, like I think Cam's gonna put it there harder, faster, stronger with more ease than Shadur is going to do it if
All right.
everything else is in a vacuum. And so I think all else equal, a year or two in the league, and he's going to be making again these Jordan Love like I can run and doing it off platform too, and then doing it extending the play. I think he's got that better than Shadur does.
That's interesting because and again, I've watched more of Shador than I have of Cam, but that's interesting that you've got Cam even a little bit higher on the arm strength category. But to be fair, I like both guys here. I would draft both of them high. I'm just not expecting them to rescue a bad franchise. I don't think that's fair to ask either guy to do that.
Yeah, because Cam and this is funny. So big picture quarterback stuff, and we've joked about this for years. Every year when a draft ends, next year's quarterback class sucks, right? Like nobody like this. Oh, that's not the year for quarterbacks. That's not the year for quarterback. And then by the time you get to the draft, and everyone's in love with five quarterbacks, and we've
Right.
made fun of it all these years. And for the first time, as now, so like I really study and do my film work and everything. Every year I've done it. Once the season ends. So Super Bowl on Sunday, Monday, I'm watching film, getting ready for the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no context for anything else. I'm only watching in the context, and I'm only watching in the context of I just watched the playoffs. I just watched Super Bowl. How do you win a Super Bowl? How do you get the quarterback to do that?
Right.
Now doing it through the season, I see why this happens. And it's because you're like, I've been watching Sam Darnold quarterback an effective offense. I've been watching Baker Mayfield, like Bryce Young's doing a little something right now.
Right.
Let's just get a competent quarterback in here and see what
Mm-hmm.
happens. And then you start liking all these guys and putting first round grades on them because look at like Bo Nix is the 12th overall pick. He was a completely flawed
Mm-hmm.
prospect, but it's working out right now. So I think in terms of drafting these quarterbacks, you could absolutely draft these guys, put them on a rookie contract. I think Shadur could probably play more right away. Cam depends on where he's going, and I'll give my answer for what Cam Ward needs at the next level up next. Um, but if I take a step back, I don't think either of these guys right now scream I'm going to be a top 10 win with or win because of MVP candidate quarterback. That's not where I see
Mm-hmm.
either of these guys right now. But again, I compared Shadur to Jared Goff, who for the last 2 years has been on like preseason MVP polls because he's in a great offense and he can execute it and like he's going to put up numbers. So like that's not bad either. You win a Super Bowl with that. That happens. So in terms of Cam Ward, I'll let you noodle on this a little bit longer. What I want to see for him is can he go somewhere that is going to have a good run game at least? He doesn't need the best receivers, doesn't need the best O line, but I want to see a good run game because I don't want to see him in disadvantageous situations. If you put if you put Cam Ward in too many third and longs, that's going to be a problem for a lot of people as a rookie right now because of what I think he is in the pocket. Because if he's bouncing around back there when NFL defenses know they can tee off and just rush after him, that's not where I want to see him. I'd be a little nervous about that. So I want him to make sure. I want him to make sure, like he's going to decide. I would like him to go to a team that's going to have a good run game. So like for the Giants, they have decent offensive line pieces. Dayball can put together a good offense. They have Tyrone Tracy. Can they put a good run game together to pair with him? The Raiders. Now again, Ben Johnson might be there next year, and it could be a whole different story. I wouldn't want Cam Ward on this version of the Raiders. That's like the worst rushing offense of our lifetime. There's no chance. There's not a chance I want to see that. So, wherever Cam Ward goes to play quarterback next year, whether it's day one or week 5 or week 10, there needs to be a good run game first, and then let him raise the ceiling of the pass game. What do you think about that? And what do you think is a good fit for Cam Ward?
That's fascinating that you say that. And I hadn't thought about the connection between the running game and Cam Ward. What I have thought in watching all the live action of Cam Ward when I look at the NFL level is how much play action I feel like he would be good at
Mm, yeah,
under center. Whereas more often than not, I really feel like I want Shador getting shotguns and pre
yep,
snap reads and stuff. Cam
yep,
Ward feels like,
yep,
and listen, play action and running game don't always go hand in hand, but they often overlap with their strengths and helping each
right.
other. So that does connect with what I feel like about Cam Ward. I would just simply say with Cam, I would like to see him not start the season as the starter. I would love to see him catch at least 6 to 8 weeks on the bench
Mm,
working with somebody. I feel like there's a better than average chance he goes straight to the Giants. You already mentioned them. I've
hmm
been thinking about them probably getting a quarterback for months now.
yep,
Cam's probably going to be sitting there more than likely, unless they just trade out of it, which I really doubt they're going to do. There's a very
yeah.
good chance that's right where Cam's going.
Yeah, Sanders, the way the board is right now, go if you go tackle or Travis Hunter at 1, Sanders 2, Hunter or Sanders 2, Cam Ward 3. So those 3 teams, Raiders and Giants at 2 and 3. I think those would be good fits. And then the Giants get whatever bridge quarterback for a few weeks there. Um, Tommy DeVito gets to be the week 1 starter. I don't care. Um, let's hit our number 3 quarterback here. We have Jalen Milroe from Alabama. Ben, how have you felt Milroe has played this year? Where are you at on him?
I've got a love hate thing going on with Jalen Milroe. During the off season, I wasn't interested in him at all. Just wasn't. I've adapted off of that. I don't want him in the first round. Somebody's probably going to grab him there because
Yep.
people need quarterbacks. So I've accepted that reality. I'd love to just see him get picked up in the second round. No big deal, no big fanfare, not a lot of expectations. Just work your way through it a year or two. Jalen Milroe running the football. Good gosh, I love watching this guy run the football. He's just this little bundle of muscle and electric speed. I
hmm
knew he was good at running the football last year. He's even better this year. You watch him on some of these runs, just scoops. Like he doesn't
Yep.
need much. It's he's got a little twitch to him. I mean, that's very unusual for quarterbacks. And then he's got the high gear, man. It's like takes off. You mentioned getting a win with guy, a competitive guy.
hmm
This is where we're
hmm
starting to put the drawbridge down and let you into the castle here. This is the guy here. You're like, okay, I can work with that.
Oh yeah.
We'll get to the passing here in a second. The number one thing a quarterback needs, but just the running, man. He can bail me out of any bad play that I call or he makes. And when the defense is forgetting about him, he can score a touchdown from anywhere on the
Oh
field.
yeah.
Goodness gracious. It is so fun to watch. He can run through people, but he'd really rather just run around them. He's that electric. And I feel very confident he can do that at the NFL level. I really feel that. So let's get to the passing. The passing is a real mixed bag, man. There's some
Yeah.
pretty throws on here. There are
hmm
beautiful throws on tape against pretty good competition that we didn't see out of him last year. Deep balls, I'm talking about. Nice, pretty deep balls.
mm
Sometimes to open guys, sometimes to guys that are covered. I mean, on the spot. And then you have some of the ugliest passes, some of the dumbest decisions, some of the most confused choices. You have weeks where he throws for 109 yards, 186 yards, 164 yards. I mean, it's up and down, up and down, up and down. And that just scares the heck out of me, man.
Yep. Yep.
I'm like, goodness gracious, will this guy ever grow out of that? Because when you see that, you feel like there's a processing problem somewhere.
Mm.
And can I coach it out of him? If not, can I work with what he is enough to keep my job? I feel like there's enough material here to work with. I can make him a little bit better passer, even if he never truly hooks up to greatness.
Hmm.
That running ability alone, maybe not season one, but by late season one, early season two, I feel like they can get him in the starting lineup and use him here. I just don't think I ever see a top 10 quarterback here on any level, but I think I can work him into a decent starter and we can win some games in the NFL.
I'm really eyeing Stefanski and the Browns with this guy right here, man. I
Okay.
mean, if we talk about Sanders and Ward in top three, and again, the teams are going to change, and so much is going to change between now and the draft. But just thinking about the Browns situation and how they really just financially speaking just need to plug in a rookie quarterback, and I guess they could
Mm-hmm.
do James, but he might play his way out of whatever they can afford next year for all we know.
Right.
Um, but I'm like, I feel like Stefanski could put an offense around this guy because the competitiveness, man. Like let's sit on that for a minute. And I talked about this game in our preview show, but just to bring it up again, that Michigan team last year, that was like two-thirds NFL players, right? Whether it's this draft or
Yeah.
last year's draft.
Yeah.
And Alabama got blown up so early in that game that they just had to go to Mill Road draws the whole freaking game. Like three-fourths of the game. He's just running at Michigan defenders. And his first carry in that nature, that wasn't his first design run that game. He lowered his shoulder and ran through two Michigan guys, just kind of to set the tone of like, we're not going away right now. And man, he keeps doing it. So I watched this year's Georgia game and this year's Wisconsin game. And he's doing the same thing, man. He's yards any way he can get it running the ball around people, through people, over people, under people. Um, Patient, like reading the blocking too on some of these design runs, really turning the corner, finding real rush lanes. Like he's really running. Like it's not just like escape the pocket and find the open spot. It's not just a perfectly designed. Like he is really running the ball with really great vision and speed and power. And I think when the running is that dynamic, you can build an offense around that, especially when he does have the deep ball he has, because he definitely has good touch on that deep ball for
Right.
sure. And I do think there's some things footwork wise, you clean that up, you get some of the pocket stuff, together because his issue in the pocket is he stands too tall. He has the like Geno Smith, Dak Prescott, like I'll take any hit you want, man. Like you bring it on. Like I need you to move around a little bit. Let's try and work some easy throws in by getting the ball out a half second later because you didn't get hit. But he will stand tall in that pocket. And yeah, man, it's hard for like, this is somebody I would have made fun of like 2 years ago for saying stuff like that. But like it's hard to look at that and be like, that's not a quarterback I would want on my team, right? So if you're if you're in a corner, if you're in a box and you have to draft a quarterback round one and those two guys are gone, like we'll see which young quarterbacks maybe come out. We'll talk about some questionable guys. I could put a first round grade on him, especially in the context of this draft. This isn't last year's draft where there was like 12 first round receivers, 8 first round tackles, an additional 9 first round edge rushers that couldn't all fit into the first round, right? Like this is a weaker class. We've gone through on the audio version of this pod all the position groups but the DBs, and there's not like we're not chock full of must have first round talents. So if I'm a team in the first round, even in this top 10, I'm like, how much is wide receiver two, defensive tackle two, edge rusher three really going to help me versus even quarterback three in this weaker quarterback class? Like, I might buy in, man. I might buy in, and we'll see what he does between now and the actual draft in terms of how people feel about his passing, processing, and um, stuff like that as a quarterback. But I really like this guy.
The the inconsistent passing has me scared to death. I would still draft him if I needed a guy because again, we've talked about this before in previous years. You have to do something at quarterback.
Mhm.
If you're not going to give up a king's ransom to the Jaguars to go up and get a guy you really want, and we're not even sure that those are elite QBs, and if you're not going to go pay a mid-level starter a ton of money, if you can even consider Jameis Winston or somebody else like that, you
Mhm.
know, well then this is your other option. you draft a guy in the first round who probably isn't really a first round guy, but you work with that. You build around him, you do what he can do, and you work with that. So the passing has me scared to death, but I'd still draft him if I needed a guy. The running is so beautiful, man. Listen to this. Against LSU, which is chock full of NFL level athletes, he ran 12 times for 185 yards
Stupid.
and 4 touchdowns against LSU and against Georgia, which has even more and better NFL level athletes on that team. He ran for 16 carries and 117 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's insane. Those are joke numbers. All right. That's Nintendo PlayStation numbers. But then you get on the passing side and you're like,
Right.
he only had 2 games over 300 yards.
Mm-hmm.
He had 6 games which were less than 200 yards. His touchdown to interception ratio passing is 15 to 10. And you realize,
Yeah.
what I've got here is a guy who probably at best is going to be an inconsistent passer, but an electric runner. And can I take that skill set, which is unique? There aren't many guys who have that. And can I win with it? I feel like I probably can.
Yeah. I'm looking at the touchdowns and interceptions last year. It was 23-6 on the year. Interceptions are fluky. I would love to see. I'll look at PFF at some point, but how many like true turnover worthy plays they graded him on for the 2 years? I'll look at that at some point. But yeah, man, I think this is a guy that can make a lot of throws, and we talk about this all the time. Like when you're a coach, if you see something that the guy can do on film, you're like, he can do it, and I can get him to do it all the time, right? So yeah, there's something there. There's something there. And oh, he said something else in there that got me. The running. It's just crazy. It's so crazy. But you get this guy in an NFL system. You get the right coach on him. Um, and yeah, maybe he does have to sit a whole year. But we'll get that's way down the road stuff. We'll get into all that. Now these are the three guys: Sanders, Ward, and Milrow, at least on NFL mock draft database, which is just I talk about all the time, just a collection of what are the mocks saying around a bunch of different places, a lot that people are doing. These are the guys still firmly in the first round. Sanders and Ward are literally 2 and 3 on boards overall. 1 and 2 at quarterback. Milrow 3 at quarterback. He's going 16 on average in mocks right now, so right in the middle of the draft. Um, Everybody else that we're gonna get to is a day two guy right now, at least viewed from afar. Um, Anything else for you on shaping up these three guys and kind of how we look at the first round? We've gone through a lot of the draft so far. Like, what are you expecting at this point? Where are these guys to kind of fall? Like top 10 for all these guys, top 5 for a couple of them, first round for all of them. What do you think will end up happening?
I feel fairly certain Sanders and Ward are going to go in the top 5, probably the top 3. I'm even curious to see if somebody shakes things up and trades up with Jacksonville
Mm-hmm.
and picks the quarterback they want. So that I'm
Perfect.
sure of. I have
Mm-hmm.
no clue what's going to happen with Milrow. I do figure he's first round guy. Is someone going to grab him in the top 10? There's enough teams up here that need quarterbacks that it probably will happen, just to be honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have the added layer, and I'm in favor of this, of cap situation.
Right.
You've got some of these teams with rotten cap situations, and they're honestly looking at it as if we have nothing to lose. Let's draft a young guy, keep him for 2 seasons. If it doesn't work, we move on down the road. And I appreciate that viewpoint very much.
We're down to the guys who are kind of viewed as day two guys as of now. Again, a lot can change between now and the draft. These guys are going to rise and fall as we go. A couple of them might even drop out. But let's start with Carson Beck out of Georgia. Ben, this was a guy that when we did this show as the preview show, we were talking about him and Sanders 1-2. Things have been falling rather rapidly for Beck this season. What have you seen from Beck, and where do you think he stands right now?
The Carson Beck thing is fascinating. At the start of the offseason, I was like, hey, this looks like a legit guy that teams would want, but he's not impressing me. I'm just not thrilled with this. So let me go draft Shador.
Hmm.
Carson Beck has just plummeted, to be honest about it. A lot of it seems to be decision making is really what I'm catching on to here more than anything else. It's not the only thing, but that really seems to be the biggest thing. You've seen a big uptick in interceptions. He's got 12 of those, but even a lot of the other things that you watch him do, even if he's not putting the ball up for grabs, it just seems to be he's not connecting the way he did last year. The point production at times, it's easy to look at Georgia's point production and say, well, no problem. But, when you go through it game by game as the season went along, you're like, dang it, Georgia usually scores more than that against teams like that. Or you realize, well, Georgia scored a couple of defensive touchdowns in that game. So his
Hmm.
actual points here that he provided just weren't as big. He's got the best one of the best offensive lines in the country he's playing with. He's got a tremendous defense he's playing with. He's got running backs and wide receivers. He lacks for nothing. And I know he's playing against some good defenses, and I give some credence to that. But the decision making for me is what's really just kind of falling apart here. And if he's struggling with decision making and interceptions at the college level, even though it's an elite college level, I'm very concerned about that at the NFL level. And I already, at the start of the season, I already wasn't thrilled with him. I believe I even called him boring, and I asked the question, well, what's gonna make the difference between him being Brady boring versus he sucks boring? And right now, it's tilting toward the he sucks boring. Now, I listen. I would still draft him in maybe the second, third round because he's got the size, he's got the talent, if you will. But boy, that decision making has just bothered me a lot, and I already wasn't super impressed anyway. So first glance, first walkthrough, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, the second thing I wrote here was the decision making is erratic. Like there are times he's pulling the ball and holding the ball that don't make sense. There's times that he is throwing the ball in the tight windows that don't make sense. Um, Early on in the season, the discourse was like he's a Bowers and McConkey merchant, right? Because those guys just always got open, always got yak, and it was very easy to just like not think about it and just throw them the ball and let them do the work. But it was funny compared to a guy, we'll talk about Quinn Ewers here in a little bit. Like with Ewers watching his tape from last year, it felt very much like he was throwing to three receivers who were going to be in the NFL that year. And Beck, I
Right.
didn't feel that as much, even though the guys he was throwing to are having better, NFL seasons right now. Um, and I didn't feel that way. And the thing that is tripping me up right now, most of all, I watched the Texas game and the Alabama game. He's awful in the pocket right now. Like I think out of these eight quarterbacks, he has the worst pocket presence that I have seen,
Wow.
which is a 180 from what I watched last year. Now again, it's two games, it's two SEC schools, but guess what? Every team's the SEC when you go to the NFL. And
Yes.
last year I just didn't see that. I mean, the game I watched from last year, I mean, again, I watched the Alabama game from last year and the Auburn game from last year going into the season. So I was still watching those games. And I thought he was good in the pocket. He was maneuvering well. He was standing tall when he needed to. He was avoiding. He was taking off when necessary. He's a very good athlete. But he gets in the ball and he is just shaky. I mean, he's trying to get rid of that ball as a hot potato. He's playing hot potato with the football. And when it is a clean pocket and he's holding it, like he's still just like moving into dangerous spots. So that's the thing that's gotten me most. And I do think the decision making with where he's trying to throw it is a result of that because all the talent's still there. I mean, there's some really good throws still on the tape from those two games. The mobility is still there. The ability to take off and run is still there. I mean, 6'4", 220, like all that stuff should be there. But for whatever reason this year he's spooked, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if that's something that could be fixed. Um, it's very confusing. I'm very baffled. I was baffled all year watching him fall down mocks, and then I watch and I'm like, this just doesn't look like the same guy from last year, and that's the conundrum when you go back, right? It's funny. We'll talk about yours, we'll talk about a couple guys, but he was in that classic boat as a junior, or redshirt junior, whatever he was, where it's like, okay, you could go out now and be a day two guy because of the traits. Or you could go back for a year and you could either end up being the first overall pick, you could be day three, or you kind of settle back in day two. It looks like he's just going to settle back into day two, but it's not where we thought the trajectory was taken. Meanwhile, because Shadur was the same thing. Shadur last year, if he had come out in that quarterback class last year, he was looking like a day two pick. And now here, we're talking about him now going, one, two, three overall. So, um, yeah, the pocket stuff has been really weird for me with Beck.
That's fascinating you say that because one of the reasons I would be willing to accept boring as I was at the start of the year is because all the decision making is good, which is what we saw last year, which is why I was okay with it. It's like, okay, this is a guy who stays in the pocket. Listen, he can get outside the pocket and nimble his way to a first down if he needs to. He is agile enough to do that. But he is not going to make his living running in any way, shape, or form at the NFL level. And he's really not even going to make his living rolling out to left or right. That's just not going to be him. He's going to have to figure it out in the pocket. And if all of a sudden now this year he's struggling in the pocket, both with the decision making that I'm seeing and then just the shakiness there too that you're seeing, I don't feel good about it at all. Now, there's enough traits there, enough talent there to where I wouldn't just give up on him. But if I'm a team that wants to take a chance on him, I don't really even want to do it in the top 40 because I can get a pretty good bit of talent there early second
Hmm.
round. So I'd really rather wait until late second round and catch him or one of these other guys in
Yep.
mid late second round as opposed to making him a top 40 pick because I figure he needs a season at the NFL level. And then I'm still not sure about the processing thing because you sometimes wonder why isn't this guy working? Well, Georgia's got a pretty good coaching staff with
Hmm.
quarterbacks. We've knocked them on some other players, defensive guys, as far as teaching techniques and stuff and coming out raw. But with quarterbacks, they've done pretty good at teaching these guys. And so for him to be struggling here with the talent he's got, it's red flagging me. So I'd love to catch him outside the top 40.
Yeah, you mentioned the athleticism. Yeah, his the best version of his athleticism is stepping up in the pocket and wiggling through, and then he's the long stride to kind of
Yeah.
get 10 yards quick, right? And if your pocket presence isn't that strong, it's just going to get harder and harder to be able to do. You try to step up and run through an NFL pocket and you're going to get tackled. So if he's not even going to have that hot button, where's he going to be at in the pocket in the NFL? So yeah, I think it looks like it's going to take him some time wherever he goes. He's going to be your classic, like he's got to get on the whiteboard at the combine and really wow us because you talk about like the process. What are you seeing differently this year than last year, right? What happened last year where you're making good, quick decisions and this year you're not? And does it feel like it's a board thing, like you were just throwing to Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers, or is there something else happening? We'll have to suss that out. Um, let's talk about the other guy that was in a very similar boat. Quinn Ewers at Texas, another guy last year that could have come out, been day two, was once like a very highly sought after and recruited player. Um, never really felt like he made it all the way into that same like Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders like top 10, but was a little bit like, okay, middle first round, maybe a top 10 guy, kind of where Milrow is now. But he's kind of just right back to day two as well. What have you seen from Quinn Ewers this year?
Ewers just always leaves me wanting more. And I hate to repeat what I said about him at the start of the season, but nothing's changed here on Ewers. I mean, Carson Beck has changed. Cam Ward has changed. Shedeur Sanders has kind of reaffirmed what I thought about him. We've even seen some new things. To me, nothing's changed on Quinn Ewers. Here's a guy that you mentioned, super talented, and he's had a good season, but he wasn't playing great. And when he went down with injury and they plugged in Arch Manning, there were even calls for Manning to just kind of keep the job.
Right?
Well, then Manning kind of struggled a little bit, and they're like, let's give it back to Quinn. At least
Mm,
we got the veteran leadership there. So he just leaves you always wanting more. You know what's inside there. You know it is. You see the nice, pretty throws, the layered
yeah.
throws, the over the top throws. He can make just about. He doesn't have cannon arm strength, but he can make just about
Right.
any throw you want, pretty much. It's all there. He's not a big, heavy guy. He's a little on the thinnish side, but
Yeah.
so was Jaden Daniels when he came in. He's
Right.
bulked up a little bit. That's fine. He's plenty mobile. He's more mobile than Cook. He can get around for first downs and roll out the pocket. Ewers can definitely roll out to the flats and extend plays and make plays. The inconsistency here, knowing that he's got that talent, he's been at Texas where they have good offensive lines. They
Hmm.
have some of the best running backs that college football
Hmm.
has to offer. For 2 years now, every year, but for 2 years now, they've got some of the best wide receivers that college football has to offer. He lacks for nothing, and yet you see the ups and downs. not very often over 300 yards, multiple times less than 200 yards passing. The touchdown to interception ratio is 24-7, which that's fine. I'd take him, but I'm just not excited about his prospects at the NFL level, man. I would take a chance on him. I'm just not planning on getting any investment, any return on my investment if I do it.
I gotta say, watching these two games this time around on Ewers, I like him more than I liked him going into the season. And I think he's held up this year better than Beck has, right? Because Beck has had those swings where he went from day
He
two
has.
prospect to potential QB1 back down to day two. And Ewers just kind of like, he just feels like he's going to be your steady classic, like second rounder where you're either drafting a high level backup for a rookie contract or like, could this guy be a spot starting come in? The size worries me, right? And I know these are different kinds of injuries, but like here it's the oblique this year, here it's the ankle a couple weeks ago, right? And he hurt something last year too, wasn't he? Wasn't he
He
banged up
did.
last year
I
too?
don't remember what it was,
Because
but yeah, he
I
did.
remember the games I watched last year for him were Alabama and Oklahoma, and one of those games he was his first game back from an injury, and he was stiff. He was throwing the ball a little bit weird. Um, he was that was when he was alligator arming the ball. He was like throwing darts almost rather than throwing a football. And in these games, I watched him in the Michigan and Georgia games, and one of those was a couple weeks coming back from the oblique, and it just felt like he was throwing off his back foot a lot. And it's not what he does. That's not his mechanic. So it was definitely something injury related, but it just felt like he was very upright and he was just kind of like lofting the ball, like he was throwing BP or something. And it was weird. And like the thing is, like all the throws were still getting there. I mean, the
Right.
guy's arm talent is real. Like it's a real thing. He's got a
It
real
is.
arm. Um, and it's accurate. And I feel the reason I feel a little steadier about him now than I did last year was he still got Isaiah Bond, who we like, but it's not last year's crew. It's not Adonai
No, it's
Mitchell,
not.
Xavier Worthy, even Jordan Whittington as a big 6'3" underneath slot guy. He's got one undersized outside receiver and some other guys, but not anybody else who's playing big in the NFL next year. And he looks exactly the same, I think. Like I think he looks like he did last year. So I'm like, oh, okay. It wasn't just the receivers last year. It's real arm talent. He's comfortable in the pocket. You know, the games I watch, again, one of them fairly close to the injury. He wasn't really getting outside the pocket, but he's comfortable being in the pocket and maneuvering around it. I think he's less of a threat than Beck to do the running stuff. Because again, I think Beck's just like long stride can get him to that extra step to get out, whereas Ewers is just a little bit smaller. He's like 6'2", 6'3", but yeah, like 200 pounds. Um, I would draft Ewers as like a backup with upside. Like I'll take this guy now if I have a question at my quarterback position, not a need, but a question, and I'll make him the backup. And if I end up playing him in the back half of his rookie year and just see what happens, you mentioned Purdy earlier. It's a little bit like Purdy, right? I've got a starter in Garoppolo who I don't love, and we'll see what happens if this guy plays, and we'll go from there. Um, I like Ewers fine, but yeah, I'm not pounding the table for him. Um, at 200 pounds with the injuries already mounting up.
It bothers me even more that he's got Steve Sarkisian and he still can't up his game. Sarkisian has long been one of the best offensive minds in college football. And by one of the best, I don't mean top 20, I mean top 3 or 4. That's how good
Mm.
Sark is. And that Ewers can't up his game even with that bothers me even more. But you did mention the arm talent is a real thing. That is real. So I'm more than happy to bring him onto my team and use a draft pick on him, a late second rounder. More than happy to do that just for that possibility alone. Be happy to do it.
Let's hit the next guy here, Ben. And I've got a bone to pick with you on this one. You and I have podcasted about quarterbacks in the NFL and the draft for 2.5 years now.
Yep.
February, March of '02 was when we first started doing this. So we're getting to this will be what, the fourth quarterback draft class, the fourth draft class we've talked about together. How did you not convince me in August that I was going to love Jackson Dart? This dude's a psycho. If
because
you
I
got
don't
kids
like
in here,
Jackson
skip
Dart.
15 seconds. Skip 15 seconds. This dude's got some shit in his neck, man. This guy is crazy. Oh my gosh. Love this guy. He's this guy, Jackson Dart is insane. So we didn't so let me reel it back in. We briefly discussed Jackson Dart in our preseason show. He was the guy that in the mock drafts again, like he was the late day two, like borderline day three, kind of like comp pick range kind of dude. And you look at his profile and you're like, okay, senior from Ole Miss, third season with the team, transferred from USC after his freshman year. 6'2", 220, like decent size, not great, pretty nice stats, modest, but nothing popped off the page. So I was like, okay, this will be that you're drafting a backup quarterback kind of guy. And you gave me that profile, you told me a little bit about him. I got that profile and stuff. And I was like, all right, I don't need to watch his film. You tell me what you've seen from a couple of years anecdotally, and we'll move on. And he hung around on all these boards. I'm like, all right, let me actually get around. I'll watch him. So I watched, and again, not great competition. I watched Wake Forest and Kentucky. This dude's nuts. This dude is so crazy, and it's awesome. I love it. He's running over people on the goal line. He's taking his helmet off and trash talking linebackers. Like he's making some gutsy throws. Like he's taking hits in the pocket. I like this is the profile of a backup quarterback that I want. Because I want my back. I've this is where I've come around on this after a few years. I want my backup quarterback to go down swinging. Don't go out bad boring versus good boring, right? Like I don't want boring as my backup. If I'm already on my backup,
Right.
whatever, man. We're on the backup quarterback. We gotta throw the script out. We gotta go for it. I want to. That's how I want to go down, man. I want my guy to be able to pump up the team, right? I want him to be able to pump up the fans. I want him to pump up himself because he's probably not actually that good. But there's some good throws on here. He's got a good arm. He can make all the throws to the field, I think. He moves well in the pocket. He escapes the pocket a little too quickly sometimes. I would actually like him to hold on to the ball a little bit longer or extend the play to make a pass a little bit more often. He does both of those things, but I think he skews towards escaping himself to run just a smidge too much, maybe 5% too much. But he can run, and it's a weapon. I mean, other than Milrow,
Yes.
I think he's the best runner of this class. He's better than Ward. He's better than Sanders. All these other guys. He seeks out contact, man. And also I like the way he goes through his progressions. He's very obvious. Like he's one of those you just watch his helmet as soon as he snaps the ball, and he's going all the way around. Like he's hitting 1 through 4. He's doing it with good timing. I think he lingers on his best receivers when he needs to. So we talked about Sanders earlier. Like he goes through it in the perfect amount of time, like a Herbert does. Okay, I look here, that's not open. I look here. I think Dart actually looks and he's like, I'm gonna wait. Maybe he gets open that extra second longer, and then I'll move off. But he very clearly is going through his progressions. He's not a one read and throw type of guy. I really like Jackson Dart. There's limitations. The ceiling isn't there. Like I don't think he's gonna be a top 10 quarter. I'm getting all excited about him and everything. But I like this guy. And of all these day two guys, right? And even borderline Milrow, depending on my team, as much as I gushed about Milrow earlier, I like Jackson Dart, man. So tell me why you don't like him and why you didn't tell me that this guy was going to be my favorite.
I've watched him for so long and watched him lose so many games. That's a couple of reasons right there. Boy, he's been around forever. He actually was the guy at USC before Caleb Williams transferred over there, and they kind of
Yeah,
let
you
him
gotta
go
you
somewhere
you
else.
gotta get out, man. Yeah, you gotta go. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then he shows up with Lane Kiffin, who is also one of the best 3 or 4 signal callers in college football. There's no
Yep.
question about it. Him, Sarkeesian, the guy at Tennessee, and there's one other guy. Those are the four, kind of the four horsemen of college football signal callers right now, as far as the big programs, not counting all the little programs. But no, everything you said about Jackson Dart is actually true. He's gotten better every year. That doesn't necessarily show up in the statistics, but it does show up in the attitude. It shows up in the willingness to seek contact that shows up in the ability to lead a team instead of just being one of the guys on the team. He does have two really good NFL level wide receivers to sling it to.
That helps.
So
Yep.
yeah, I am a little concerned. He's got an NFL level running back too. I'm a little concerned that gunslinging, throw it up mentality would lead to interceptions.
Yep.
But if he's getting yardage, let's say you bring him as a backup spot starter, and then maybe he grows into a starter. If he's getting yardage and he's bringing attitude and he's scoring points and he is also giving me a chance to win football games and he can run. You mentioned he's a legit runner,
Hmm.
not a scrambler, a runner. Then I'll live with the interceptions. I do expect interceptions at the NFL level, but I'll live with it. I'm not going to plan my future around him, but I'm more than happy to draft this guy, bring him on board. He's got a legit NFL arm. He's not weak armed. He's got a legit, talented NFL level arm that would deserve to be on the football field. So then you just start asking yourself, well, we're back to between the ears again. We're back to processing. If everything else is checking, he's got the running, he's got the arm, we're back to processing. Playing with one of the best signal callers of football in Lane Kiffin, maybe we can't coach it out of him. So maybe he is what he is. But no, I'm still happy to have that. And if I bring him on a good roster, I definitely think we got a chance at making the playoffs and maybe saving my job as a head coach and my job as a general manager. So I'm more than happy to bring that in. He's got everything that you would need. It's just not in full amounts here. It's not elite level arms. It's not elite level decision making. It's not elite level accuracy. None of that. But no, this is a good quarterback you could bring in for sure.
Love this guy. I love this guy. Um, Anecdotally, this isn't something I prepped you for, but yeah, I did. The one thing I did think about that was a hang up was Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss offense, and just what being in that makes you look like. And we mentioned the 2022 draft. And that was where we first started talking about this stuff. Matt Corral comes out in that draft. And obviously Matt Corral has a lot of things off the field that has held up his NFL career.
Yes.
But in terms of, and that was a weak quarterback class, as we know, that was the Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis year. And Corral was getting day two buzz, ends up going in the fourth round of the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where like that, yeah, that helmet scouting comes into play? Like what do you remember? Not what, don't go in depth on Corral, but like in terms of remembering what you remember about Corral and then kind of applying it to Dart being the successor to Corral in this offense for this program, do you have some of those same concerns, or does Dart feel like a different enough player than Corral was?
Yeah, you're right on it to me. Dart is a different and better player than
Okay.
um what was his name again? I
Corral.
lost
Yeah,
it on
there you
the
go.
map.
Exactly. Yeah.
Corral. Yes,
Yep.
that's okay. Enough said. No, Corral just didn't have the arm strength. Corral
Yeah.
could run pretty good,
Right.
and Corral was probably smarter, a little bit better at making decisions, to be honest, than Jackson
Hmm.
Dart. But he didn't
Hmm.
have the NFL arm, and I liked him coming out, but
Hmm.
just not the arm strength. And then you added in an injury, and then you added
Right.
in the off-field stuff. All of that's kept him out of it. So I do feel like Jackson Dart, all things considered, is a much better prospect here.
Yeah, and Corral, they both interesting. They both had a couple multi-interception or double-digit interception season, then brought it down after that. That feels maybe like a little bit of like learning the offense. But yeah, what I watched of Corral then, which was less than, I'm gonna watch of Dart by the time April rolls around. Yeah, I feel like Dart has some real quarterbacking in him. We're gonna hit our last two quarterbacks on this quarterback check-in 2025 NFL Draft Show. Um, Garrett Nussmeier, Ben, is a guy we have not talked about yet, but about I don't know, third of the way through the college football season, he just started popping up on all these boards. Dane Brugler of The Athletic was teasing that he was thinking about making Nussmeier his QB1 at that point in the year. Now he's backed off of that. I think he has him down in like the 30s on his big board, which factors in the fact that, the quarterback multiplier and what teams are saying and stuff. But Nussmeier on mock draft database was up in the 30s at that point. He had climbed all the way up there from like the hundreds. He's now dropped down to 77. So this is a guy that's kind of fallen. A little bit of background since this is the first time we've talked about him. He's a redshirt junior from LSU in his first year as the starter there. He's 6'2", listed at 200 pounds. And Ben, he looks pretty filled out. So I'm confounded by that number. Maybe he's got a lot of t-shirts on under those pads. But he was born in Louisiana. His dad, Doug, was actually a pro quarterback, and they moved all over. But Garrett played high school and attended Edward S. Marcus High School in Flower Mound, Texas. 247 had him as a four-star, the 19th ranked quarterback in his class. ESPN had him as a four-star as well, QB 14, but the ninth player overall in Texas. So a little bit of pedigree there for him as a recruit. But he's been at LSU this whole time, redshirted as a freshman, 2 years on the bench behind Jane Daniels both years, I think. But is now getting his first crack as a starter. This season he played the bowl game against Wisconsin last year. Ben, what have you seen? Nussmeier, this really is only a year as a starter. He's kind of gone up and down the boards already. What have you seen from Nussmeier so far this season? What kind of piques your interest?
I'm curious to see what you have to say from a more technical perspective, but I'll give you my live version angle. I've been unimpressed. He's had a productive season. You look at it from a yardage standpoint, a touchdown standpoint. He's definitely figured something out that he wasn't able to figure out before. So I like that. He's always had good size. He looks thicker than 200 pounds to me. I totally agree. I don't know where that number comes from, if it's legit or not. He looks thicker than that. So he's got the size. He's got the arm strength too, in terms of being able to place the ball in different areas. Again, it's nowhere near elite. I'm not even sure it's very good, but it's good arm strength from what I've seen. So I like all that. He's got some mobility to him. Not he ain't gonna take off and blister you like Jalen Milroe. But he can move around a little bit in the pocket. So I like all of that. Decision making isn't good. Uh, you wonder what he's thinking sometimes. um, he had a good early start to the season.
Yep.
I guess that's what got him up draft boards.
Yeah.
But then you started to get these clusters of interceptions, and I not just one a game, two a game, three a game, multiple games. Like, dang it, man, hang on to the ball here. We can do something with this. And then as the season wore on, you get into the last part of the season and it's sacks. Goodness gracious, it's just he had 7 sacks against Florida alone, but it's all these
Mm.
clusters of sacks, man. So now you've got a guy who's producing, and that is important against top defenses in the nation. Producing yardage, that is something. But boy, between interception, sacks, and decision making, I'm still not really eager to put him on my NFL roster. Although if he came out in this year's draft, I'd pick him up somewhere third round maybe and take a chance on him. But that's about where I'm at, man.
Yeah, I saw all the hype and I tried to give him more credence than I would have last year, right? Because last year we have the Jaden Daniels thing exploding for 1 year at LSU and I wanted to
Right.
give credit to that, but yeah, I was just unimpressed. I was kind of bored watching him. I was just like, he's just kind of a dude out there. Like he's pretty big. I mean, he's listed. I mean, even College Football Reference has him at like 6'2", 172. There's no chance. That's probably what he was as a freshman or 18 years old coming in. He's listed at, yeah, like six. What did I write down here? Six. Yeah, he's officially listed at 6'2", 200. There's no way. I mean, he's got to be 6'3", 215 or something like that
That's what
now.
I'm thinking. Yeah.
Um, and like he moves pretty well. Seems like he's a pretty decent athlete. He's comfortable using the middle of the field. A lot of slants. You talk about Tua, right? Just like I'm just gonna throw some blind slants here. I think that's a little bit of what's going on. Um, he's fine in the pocket, but I don't see him as a real threat to go anywhere. So I'm not really that worried about him moving around back there. He does force balls in bad spots for sure. Just not very dynamic overall. Like he's just kind of out there. He snaps the ball, he throws it to a guy, and like that. I didn't feel anything, to be completely honest with you. And I think you probably hit the nail on the head. Like he had a good first few weeks of the season. I'm looking at his game logs, 300 yards. You know, his low on the season was 285 going into week 7, and then starts dropping down from there. And he's had another 300-yard game, but yeah, just nothing really exciting. So hot first few games makes his name known. Again, LSU, that bump. Good, like I said, NFL size, but just not. I don't really see anything on here. The last two guys we've held off on, we should also say, are guys that have eligibility to go back and will probably, it feels like, go back for another season. Feels like Nussmeier definitely needs to, just to really kind of fine tune everything, get more reps as a 1 year starter without like, because even Daniels was a starter elsewhere at Arizona State, obviously, but comes to LSU 1 year there, but is like dynamic runner, like right off the bat, and even a step below dynamic, very good deep ball. Like you had very clear traits. So even if it was a one hit, the question one hit wonder, it was like, well, these are true NFL skills that are obvious right now. Like Nussmeier blew up for 4 games, doesn't have that one thing that feels really dynamic. So yeah, going back feels like it'd be the right move for him.
Agreed. Nussmeier, there are levels to this. Nussmeier is the first quarterback we've hit where I'm like, not totally sure I see a whole lot here that I would want to work with at the NFL level. Doesn't mean I would not draft him because you want to add guys who have some level of talent. I'm just not sure what I'm working with here, to be honest. That I the other guys, Jackson Dart offers me the running
Right.
and a talented arm. I can work with that. Maybe in a season or two. Jalen Milroe offers me the wild passing
Hmm.
with the electric running ability. I can definitely
Hmm.
work with that. I'm not sure what I'm going to work with here with Nussmeier, to be honest.
Yeah, you're just kind of getting a warm body to be to be completely. And this sounds horrible. Like there's nothing super bad. Like I said, we said there's bad decision making, but like it's not that he can't throw a football or can't move. Like he's just kind of there. Like I wouldn't really know what I would feel like I needed him for either. Like if I'm not drafting him to be my backup either, right? Like Dart's a guy I said like could be my backup because of what he brings as a quarterback overall, everything. Ewers I would bring in as a backup because of the arm talent. Beck I would bring in as a backup because of the athleticism. I think it's very clear. I think Beck is a little bit better of an athlete than you, but still, just the size, the arm talent, like they're the traits. That's what I should say. Beck has the traits that I would say I'm at least going to bring him in, and I'll make him my number two to bet on it. But I wouldn't feel comfortable drafting Nussmeier and saying, okay, there's my backup for the like. I would want him to be the number three, and if I'm taking him to be my number three, I'm really hoping to get him at the end of the draft just to see if there's something there long term.
I would tend to agree. There's other guys that we will not cover tonight that I'd really rather have than Garrett Nussmeier, all
Right.
things
Yeah, there's
considered.
there's probably the profile of guys that are the 5th year seniors, have played in 100 college games that I would much rather have backup just because of the experience, the Brock Purdy kind of guy. Let's hit our last guy of the night. This was my crush last time around. He still is, Ben. Drew Alar from Penn State. 6'10", it feels like. It's just like incredible. Just huge, fast, big arm. What do you like from Alar?
Everything, and yeah, there's still things that trouble me. Let me start. This guy's only 20 years old, and he
Yeah.
looks it.
Yeah.
Not the size, but the face. You can tell this
Oh
guy's
yeah.
still growing up, man.
Oh yeah.
He looks like he might have just got out of high school prom, to be honest. I mean, he's only 20 years old, so even though he's been around for Penn State for a couple of seasons now, still a young guy here, which
Hmm.
makes me think he'll probably go back to college. This guy's got the arm, and this guy's got mobility. And to me, this guy, I, I'm not sure I necessarily want to put him as a top five future NFL guy, but he looks like a guy who could be top 10, top 12 rather easily if he ever really catches on. No, he hasn't done that yet. I always look for production. If I don't see production, I'm going to red flag a little bit here. The production just isn't there, man. 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Like, okay, that's fine. Um, he's gone over 300 yards twice this year, 2 times, and he's been under 200 several times. He's just been barely crossing the 200-yard mark several times. That always bothers me. I want my quarterback to be able to throw the football, produce yardage. Okay, even if he's going to throw some picks and get some sacks, at least give him the yardage. He's not doing that, so that bothers me. But I'm going to put a lot of that back on the Penn State coaching staff, the offensive coordinator specifically. it's one of the most unimaginative offensive systems you will see in college football. There's so little there. Uh, I hate to call him one of the worst play callers in college football, but they're down toward that end of the spectrum. And then some of the play calls not only are unimaginative, but are confusing. I'm not a big XO guy, but even I can look at some of what Penn State does and go, why would anybody do that? So I don't know how much of Drew Aller's lack of development to put on the Penn State coaching staff. I feel like some of it is legit. So if he were to show up over with Lane Kiffin or with the Tennessee guy Josh Heupel or with Steve Sarkisian, would it change? And I'd be very interested in finding out how he would do with a better coaching staff, maybe even just at the NFL level. So he's not going to leave Penn State. He'll stay there and he'll work his way up through the draft that way. But I'd be very interested to see how Drew would do with a better offensive coaching staff.
You're telling me you don't love the staff that has Tyler Warren, the 6'6", 250-pound tight end, taking wildcat snaps and running some option plays? You don't love that? That was my
Uh,
introduction to Tyler Warren, by the way. We did what our pal Austin Freed of Tricky Takes called the 7-on-7 group, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, and that Warren was a player left off and is very quickly like there's some guys that feel that he should be tight end one in the class and everything. So this was my first introduction to him. Like, oh, big guy, 6'6", 250. Like, I love this.
yeah,
And then he's back there in the Wildcat. What are you doing? What do you think you're doing, big boy? What's going on here? And he not only does he take the snap, but then he's running an option with a running back, and Alar is off wide. I'm like, what are we doing
impressive.
here? They bring in a they bring in whoever the quarterback is, number 9, the backup. I don't know if he's even a quarterback at this point. He could be a corner for all I know if they're letting Warren take snaps. Come in to run more option plays than Alar. I'm like, Alar is 6'5", 240 and can run. Why are you ever taking this guy off the field or putting him out wide, putting the ball in anyone else? But anyways, I love Alar. I didn't even write down a bunch of stuff on him. I watched the West Virginia game where he looked like he could just do whatever he wanted. And then I watched the Ohio State game, which they lost, but he was putting the ball in good places, man. And that Ohio State, those DBs, I don't know what the overall vibe is on them, but they were just covering everything. They had everything blanketed, and he looks good in the pocket. He moves in the pocket well. He extends. He gets out of the pocket. He can run. He can make all the throws. Yeah, the decision making, the accuracy, even a little bit of the like choosing what type of throw to put on a route. You could probably quibble with if you want to get really into the details. Like there are some moon balls that he's throwing where like probably didn't need that much loft on it. There's some darts that he's throwing where it's like you probably had some room to put some air under it. There's some of that stuff. You said the young guy, a weird offense. He's where, from a profile standpoint, Beck and Ewers were last year. Whereas like he could get drafted right now, second round, because of the traits. And some franchises might even throw him in as a starter just because it's all there. Like you might just go for it. Or he could sit for a year. But he would do well to go back because he could truly be competing for first overall pick next year. We said that about Beck. Some said it about Ewers. Didn't work out. But I don't see the floor for him going and any further than just being right back in the spot next year anyways as a day 2 guy just because of those traits. Um so even more than like seeing something on film that makes me think like he should go back to work on this, it's more just like it's a ceiling play. Like yeah, you'd be a second round pick this year. You might go first overall in 2 years and stay in college another year, NIL, try to win a championship. Don't get yelled at every single week by millions of fans. Well, he might be doing that, but whatever. Um, I like this guy, but I think he should stay another year.
If he catches on, and he hasn't yet, he hasn't caught on yet. But if he light bulbs that are gets with a good offensive coordinator, then the sky is the limit for him. You could talk about top 5 NFL futures is where he could go. And I really like him. I really do. He just leaves me wanting more. But watching that Penn State offense, listen, There are times where that Penn State offense will take a offensive lineman and put him in motion. The offensive lineman is in motion, but he never did turn up field on short yardage plays. This offensive lineman continued going horizontally toward the
I
out of
did.
bounds
I
line.
saw this play. Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the point of that? You got a big guy on the field who does nothing but occupy space. You should be using him to push forward, but instead he's
You got to
going
really
this way.
watch out for those OT end arounds. You got to really put a spy on that one.
And they didn't even use that. And then I was like, well, that's a big decoy, right? So, and then you see other plays where you'll have three receivers all in one side of the field in a tight area where the defense can just kind of zone it up. And you're asking Aller to squeeze the ball into those little areas. You haven't
Hmm.
spread the field out vertically, horizontally in any way. You're like, what is this 1960s football? You're in these tight bunches and you're looking for that tight end. I mean, that's a heck of a tight end, by the way. But I mean that's your game plan, you know.
Right.
And so I do question the staff. And again, I don't know where the real problem is. If it's Aller's processing that he never catches on, or if it's just the coaching staff not being able to even get him up to normal college football type stuff.
If Sanders didn't have the year that he had this year, capitalizing on going back and the team success that came with it and the personal stats and everything that happened, this would be one of those weird years where it was like you kind of look around and there are gonna be some team, Ward, I think Ward, like we said it. I mean, we think he's gonna be a top five, maybe top three, definitely top 10 pick. But there are gonna be teams that just like have the questions for him based on the one year and only ACC, whatever, blah blah blah. We talked about him. In the olden days, this would be the year that this guy LR just kind of comes out of nowhere and gets in front of coaches and yeah, 6'5", 240, throws and runs, and they're like, you know what? Screw it. First overall right now. And we just see what happens. But Sanders having the year he had kind of puts everybody in the right place. Sanders probably QB1, Ward 2, Milrow kind of 3, and LR gets to just kind of go back and see what happens. But yeah, man, and it's one of those things like college basketball where the guy on, I mean, even a good Penn State's good so like a good program has like 7 points a game, but it's the way the college game flows. It's the way, like, it's what he's asked to do. The offense isn't very expansive. Like there's not a lot going on, but he's like playing the right way and he's coached well and everything. Then he goes to the NBA and it's like immediately like starts scoring the ball. It feels like this could be that. Like he's in this like archaic offensive system, Alara is at Penn State. And if you just like unleash him and he goes somewhere and he's in shotgun and it's spread offense and they're just like, can you throw the ball to that guy really far over there? And he's like, yeah, I can do that. Like that would be great. And he can throw like 30 touchdowns as a rookie or something crazy like that. This is all to say next year when he does come out, I'm going to be insufferable about him. So everybody just be prepared. Everybody
I
be ready.
probably
I'm not going to shut up.
I'm probably gonna be right there with you. There's nothing to not like about Alar except he's just not yet clicked. You
Yep.
know, that's the only thing.
It's going to
One
happen.
other thing I'll toss in there: if you don't like this year's group of quarterbacks, it is a viable option to wait till next year's group, and that group might include Aller, and it might include Arch Manning,
Right.
who seems like he's got some legit stuff. It might include a kid named Nico who's very young,
Hmm.
Lama Lavia from Tennessee.
Hmm.
It might include Dante Moore, who's at Oregon right now, but we'll see how that works out. There's a pretty good group sitting there possibly next year, but you're going to have to be willing to go up next year's board to get whoever shows up next year. So if you're
Right.
like, no, we'll lay back this year, we'll build out the roster a little bit, that's a fair thing to do. But then you and the owner, the GM, the coach have to be willing to pay the price to go up next year's board and get whatever guy you feel like is deserving.
Ben, that felt like a good note to end on, but anything else for you this quarterback check-in episode before we get out of here?
I like this class, but I don't love it. There's two guys here that I would draft high. but I don't see them as being elite prospects like in the past couple of seasons. After that, there's a pretty big drop off to Milroe, who I would still take first round because of his running ability. And then it feels like to me there's a big drop off to guys that I would still take and give a chance to, but that's going to take a kind of a build out plan.
Everybody come back in 3 months when Ben and I have 6 first round grades on these quarterbacks. 'Cause that's just it's the way this game rolls. We will as we get close, we're in December, and if the NFL playoff scenarios are starting to come into play. When the season ends, Ben is going to start joining twice a month. We're going to get hot and heavy here for the draft season. If you're watching on YouTube, we will continue probably from this point on. Be putting draft content on YouTube, especially once we get to draft season officially after the NFL season. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel and looking for that. If you're here on the Simon and Friends podcast audio version, thank you all so much for listening. Make sure you continue to do so. Check out Box Score Network. Check out Ben on YouTube, Sports and Money KC, as well as on Odds On Favorite every week. All the guys, Tricky Takes, and Two Peas on a Pod as well. And shout out because CONCACAF, our soccer podcast, international soccer on the American side. Make sure you're checking that out. Thank you all so much. We will be back on this YouTube channel on Saturday night/Sunday morning for our preview show. We will be back on the Simon and Friends pod next week. Thank you all so much. Have fun. Be safe out there.